Okay, so we're going to start here for biodiversity. So what we're going to learn in this biodiversity. So first, we need to define the term species. What's meant by species? Again, the same definition that from the previous topic that we have learned. Okay, they are the group of the same morphology, same in terms of behavior, same in terms of physiology. And then very important is they can interbreed, okay, among each other to produce fertile offspring. Are you clear? But they are reproductively isolated from other species. Then they belong to the same species. Okay. Then ecosystem, and then the niche. Okay. Ecology niche. Sometimes we call it. Okay. So from here, then we're going to look at what we learned before in your ecosystem before in your SPM or IGCSE. Then we have to define or explain the biodiversity, how we study and analyze the biodiversity and consider them at 3 different levels. So what are 3 different levels? So the first level, we're going to study variations in ecosystem or habitats. We call it as the ecosystem diversity. So what's mean ecosystem diversity? So very simple one. We have 2 very distinctive ecosystem. One is the terrestrial ecosystem. Another one is the marine ecosystem or aquatic ecosystem. Can you see that these 2? A broad one. So each ecosystem is characterized by their distinctive organism. You don't see at the marine ecosystem or aquatic ecosystem, you get the elephant inside. No, cannot. So because of this, we have this what we call the ecosystem diversity. Even though the terrestrial, we may have, for example, tropical forests, right? Then you may have the Antarctic and Arctic ecosystem, right? So you can see that different kind of the ecosystem. Okay, then each ecosystem characterized by their special species. So we look at the number of species and their relative abundance. So the second level down, okay, will be called as a species diversity. Are you clear? Species diversity. So for example, if you zoom down into the forest or tropical forest ecosystem, then you can see that got plants, got animal, different kind of animal, different kinds of the birds, right? So species diversity, how many species do we have? And what's so important when we learn about biodiversity? And each species, we zoom it down, they have what we call the genetic variations, or we call it genetic diversity. And genetic diversity is very important when we look at how stable a population can be. Are you clear? Okay, for example, if you look at this, if a population without genetic diversity, it means all of them will share a same genetic weak spot, right? For example, everyone have the same weakness. Okay, everyone has same weakness. For example, in your class, every of you learn biology, every of you learn chemistry, every of you learn, okay, mathematics. So no diversity. Can I say that? So it means that if I throw the biology question for you guys, oh, you guys can answer, no problem. But I throw for the maths, I throw law question for you guys, no diversity at all. You can't answer. Correct? But if the class mix with bio students, further math student, law student, if I throw you guys with the law question, law student can answer. So they will be adapt. Throw in bio question, bio student can adapt. Can you see that? So diversity is very important to make sure that the stability of the ecosystem. So we're going to learn these 3 later. Okay. And very important, always come up in your essay question or even a structure question, 3, 4, 5 marks question. Why we need, what is the reason we need to maintain biodiversity? Why? What's so important about the diversity in this case? Okay. So we're going to learn these 3 learning outcomes in these subtopics. Okay. So before we start with the biodiversity, okay, in fact, I can straight away, skip this part. Okay, I say that it's not in our syllabus, but I still feel like it's very important to learn, right, to recap this part. Okay, so please do bear with me if you don't already know all the details here. Okay, so ecology, when we talk about the word ecology, logy means study. It's a study of the ecosystem. So what we study here, very important, is not study the living organism only, but we study the interrelationship, how we link each other between the organism and all living, mean biotics, and non-living abiotic component of their environment. So what does this mean? Interrelationship, for example, if you look at the environment here, you yourself, how you interact with your pets, interact with your friends, living. Can I see that? And non-living, you breathe in the air, you drink water. So how you interact, this is a study, but it's not study about you, but a study about an ecosystem. So in terms of ecology, we always focus in these two themes, the flow of energy and cycling. Okay, so the input of energy through the sunlight, and then plant carry out photosynthesis and continue to pass on this energy, to transfer this energy from the producer to consumer and so on. And some material we need to do the recycling here. For example, nitrogens, recycle, carbon, water. So those are the elements or very important theme when we study ecology. And this part, very, very important, we link it, to biodiversity. Why? Because the flow of energy cannot be no diversity, only one organism do everything. Cycling of material, one person do everything. Cannot. You must have a different species of organism to carry out this. Okay? The flow of energy as well as the cycling. So that's why we learn the ecosystem, because we have to use this piece of information to link it. Why we need to maintain the biodiversity. So before we study the ecology or the ecosystem, that we need to know certain terms here. Okay, the definitions. First, habitat. So habitat basically is a place, okay? It's a place where a species live within an ecosystem. So we can have macro habitats and micro habitats. So what is mean macro? Macro, like forest, big. Can you see that? A particular species live. But it can be micro, for example, on your skin. Or a certain animal, the skin of the animal, okay? Or in your digestive system, you have the bacteria. So that we call as a micro habitat. Okay, we have macro, we have micro. Okay, so each species will have their own requirements, okay, for their own habitats. Okay, for example, you have your own requirements. Some like to stay at a condo, some like to stay near to the seaside. So that's why each living or each species will have their requirement for the particular habitats. Okay, so ecology generally organize this biological world in a nested hierarchy. Again, we like to put a hierarchy, right? So, okay, so I say that from the Earth to the for example, Asia. Okay, for Asia, we zoom down to the Southeast Asians, and then to the country, to the states, and go to the Mukim district, right? So same, we go down this way. So a lot of time we studied, okay, the basic cell living for all living organisms. We start with the cell, and then all the cell group together to form the tissues, right? And then tissues will form the organs. Okay, then from the organs we form, okay, the system. From the system we form the individual chronon or a species, individual species. But we don't stop here. You can see it from a small, all the cells collectively form tissue, tissue form organ, organ form system, system form this individual species, but not enough. We can actually continue. So all species living at the same time, same place, then it form a population. Let's say a human population living at the same place, same time. Okay, so from populations, so different population can interact together, right? For example, human interact with the pet. Can I say that? Human interact with the pet, right? For example, so form a community. So what is the difference between community and population? Population means same species. So different species interact together, it will form a community. So this community not only interact among the living organism only. So they also interact. For example, we need to breathe into the air. We need to have the, for example, plant need the sunlight, need the soil, need the water. So when they interact with the abiotic factor together, then it forms the ecosystem. Can you see that? Right? And then this ecosystem, they are not what we call this isolated. They are not isolated. Some ecosystem, like for example, in a forest, you do have the forest ecosystem. You may have the river ecosystem. They also interact each other, correct or not? So it forms what we call the biome. Are you clear? So this biome, for example, as I said, that tropical rainforest, you do have the aquatic biomes, right? You have the marine ecosystem from the aquatic biomes, and then together it forms the largest one called biosphere. So in this case, biosphere only one, our Earth. Okay, biosphere. So in this Earth, you do have many kinds of biomes. In each biome, you have the ecosystem. Within ecosystem, you have the community. Within the community, you have the populations. Okay, there is the problem when it comes to the definitions of the species and the population. Why? Because both of them, the definitions quite alike. The one that differentiates between population and species, at population, you must have the word at the same place, same time. Species, no need. Okay, definition, you don't put in the word space, same place and same time. Why? Because species, even though human, we don't live at the same, okay, for example, Malaysian. Okay, Malaysian compared to European. We have two populations but belongs to the same species. Why? Because we can interpret no reproductive isolation between Malaysians and European. You can, right? You can get married together, can have the means of fertile offspring together. So we belong to the same species, but two different populations. Do you get the idea here? So when you define species, don't need to put in the word same place and same time. But for a population, they must live at the same place and same time. Only they can form a population. So Malaysian is a population, Europeans another population. Two different populations, but belongs to the same species. Are you clear? So that's why you can see that here, when you have the word same place, same times. So number 3 must be populations. Can you see that the definitions here must be population? Are you clear? But if I say a group of organisms with similar morphology, physiology are able to breed with each other to produce fertile offspring, in fact, we can add in another one. They are reproductively isolated from other species. So means that number 6, can you see that? Species. So when it comes to species, don't put in the word same space, same time, or same place, same time. Are you clear? Same place, same times. This one applied to populations. Okay. The rest you should be able to answer it. Okay. This one is the answer. You can actually look at it later when you finish. Okay. So the component of ecosystem are that affect the organism within it can be divided into the biotic factor, means living, and abiotic means non-living component. But be careful, guys, when you write, don't say non-living organism. Okay, organism must be living. Okay, non-living, so say non-living thing or non-living components. Okay, so example, humidity, inorganic ion, soil, carbon dioxide concentration, those are abiotic factors. Okay. Competitions, right? For example, 2 organisms compete for the supplies of the food, supplies of the nutrient, then biotic. Light intensity, okay, oxygen concentrations, right? Temperature of the surrounding, water supply, those are abiotic. Wind speed, abiotic, nothing to do with the living organism. But feeding behavior, okay, predations, parasitism, mutualism in this case, okay, those are biotic factors. That's how the interactions between the living organisms. Okay. So next term that we need to define here is the niche. So the niche, basically we talk about the role of an organism in an ecosystem. So when you describe it, then we talk about where it is, where they live, how they obtain the energy, and how it interact both in the physical environment and with other species. Okay, so now actually how we draw that? Okay, for example, the role of a plant in an ecosystem. Where? Okay, in the tropical rainforest. How they obtain the energy? Oh, they obtain the energy from the sunlight, carry out photosynthesis. And how they interact with others, physical environment. So they need to take, okay, for example, we talk about the when they carry out photosynthesis. So they actually absorb the water from the soil. Okay, they absorb the sunlight. Okay, they take in CO2 from the physical environment. And how they interact with other species? So they are producer. Right? They are producer. They are the input energy in the food web and also the food chain. Can you see that? So this is how we actually define or describe an organism niche. Okay, so basically their role, or in general, we say that is a ecological role of organism in an ecosystem. So generally for plants, they are producer. Animal, consumer, their role. Okay, so in many ecosystems, there are similar niche, a lot of similar niche that may occupy the same by the same species or different species. For example, okay, if you look at a very small, let's say for example, you look at small grassland, so the grasses, okay, the grasses. So you can see that all the same species, but they have a similar niche, producer. But you go in the tropical rainforest, so many kind of plants, different species of plant, but they do have the same or similar niche here. Okay, so next we continue with this. As I said, that's two themes, the very important themes under ecology, what we study. So we study the energy flow and also the energy transfer. That's very, very important, right? To sustain, to make an ecosystem sustain, then very important, there must be the energy flow and also the energy transfer. Okay, so first, the initial entry of energy into the most ecosystem during photosynthesis. So the idea of photosynthesis is very important. We must use the inorganic carbon to form organic carbon compound, and this only can be done by the plant or photosynthetic plants, I put it this way. Okay, so where this input energy come from? We do know from sunlight, correct? But if you look at this diagram, you realize that light energy is not 100% absorbed by the leaf. So there are some energy loss here. For example, if we have 1,000 units of the solar energy reach the leaf surface, this is one they reach the surface, about 3% only. The majority of them, they actually hit on the floor, right? Can I see that? Or hit on the building, so they don't hit on the leaf, or they hit on the stem. Again, useless because stem they don't have this photosynthetic pigments, right? So out of this 1,000 unit, you can see that majority of them, okay, they might, okay, energy absorbed but not used by the chlorophyll. Why? They use to evaporate the water, okay, the energy, and some of them just be reflected. Okay, and some of them just transmit through, okay, because not all parts of the plant, they have the chloroplast or chlorophyll to trap the light energy. Okay, some of them absorbed by chloroplast, but energy lost during the photosynthesis. As I said that, you still remember how the electrons, okay, excitation of electron pass through the electron transport chain. Those processes not perfect. Okay, basically means that there will be energy loss. So this energy loss during the photosynthesis. Then we do have the gross primary productions. Okay, some of this energy will be used by the plants to carry out the respiration at night. So you do have the net primary production. So you can see that actually out of 1,000 units, only 55 units of energy. So very, very inefficient, but do sufficient to sustain the ecosystem already. Okay. So why inefficiency in the energy conversions by the producer? This one, okay. Do take notes about this. Okay. So some sunlight needs the leaf entirely fall onto the ground or non-photosynthetic surface. some sunlight being reflected from the surface of the leaf, particularly the green, not the green lights. Okay, so some light pass through the leaf without encounter the chlorophyll molecule, just pass through. That's all, transmit across. Okay, only certain wavelength light being absorbed by the chlorophyll, right? Okay, majority of them right at the blue violet regions and also the red region, but the green reflected. Even though we do have the accessory pigment, let's say carotenoids, okay, xanthophyll, they do absorb, but it's not maximum. Okay, so energy loss and the energy absorbed by chlorophyll is transferred to the carbohydrates during the reactions of the photosynthesis. Okay, either in the light dependence or light independent reactions. Okay, so for example, in the light dependent photophosphorylations, right? So electron pass through the ETC, energy loss. Okay. So the organic carbons compound that plant synthesize serve a supply of the chemical energy to all of the other organisms. So the microorganism that consume organic carbon compound made of plants is known as the consumer. So plant will be the producer. Consumer, we have primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary consumer. So the way in which energy flow from the producer to consumer, we can draw it as a form of food chain, and then the arrow in the food chain indicate the direction in which the energy flows. So in this case, you can see that, okay, from the producer, go to the primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary consumer. Okay, so we can fill in banana tree as a producer. Okay, and insects will be the primary consumer. Okay, the shrew here will be the secondary, snake will be the tertiary, and the eagle will be the quaternary. Okay, so this is one food chain. In any ecosystem, why we learn about the food chain here, basically we want to look at the stability, okay, the stability of the ecosystem. If one ecosystem only formed by one food chain is very, very unstable. Why I say so? You try to imagine that if there is something happen, climate change, for example, or if you look at this, okay, due to a disease, okay, there's no genetic diversity. All of them share the genetic weak spots, so means that the disease may kill the insect. Are you clear? You try to imagine, without any insect, if only formed by one food chain, and the shrew, let's say, cannot consume the plant, then you will see that the whole ecosystem collapse. So that's why what we link to two things. One, species diversity, right? We're going to learn at the second level, right? Species diversity. How many species in an ecosystem? If we do have many species within the ecosystem, we can form more food chains. And also why genetic diversity is very important. If no genetic diversity, the whole population of the insect may gone. Right? Can you see that? Okay, may extinct, let's say, for example, or remove from that particular ecosystem, then the whole ecosystem will collapse. So that's why we do need to learn about the food chains and also the food web. Sorry. Okay, so the interrelationship between many food chains together can be drawn as a food web. So look at this food web. Okay, so it's quite complicated. It's good because as many species as possible that we can have in one ecosystem, then that particular ecosystem will be more stable. For example, in this case, in terms of producer, we have two different producers. For example, we have other plants and also the ones that without cannot produce the fruits, and I want produce the fruits. Then you can see that we have different organisms in that particular tropical rainforest. Can you see that? Okay, in the particular rainforest. Then just now I say that if let's say no more insect, doesn't matter because the chickens here can directly take the. Can you see that? Okay, can directly take, I mean, or eat other choices in this case. Okay, so again, this is one of the ecosystem. Okay, yep. Generally, we can draw this food webs. Okay, so what will happen here? If you look at this, guys, go back to the definition. What species? Species basically means that each of them, they are one species. Each of them, they are one species. Why? Because they are reproductively isolated from other species. They are same morphology. They can live. Okay, means they can interbreed and produce fertile offspring, and they form a population. So we have a population of the shrew, we have population of the frogs, we have populations of the chickens here, right? So population. Why we say population? Because they live at the same place at the same time. So they form a population. So these interactions, can you see that these interactions, okay, form a community. So can you see that these are a community? Okay, and we do know that the plant interact with the soil, they interact with the water, they need to take in the CO2, right, to carry out photosynthesis. So entire thing now form an ecosystem when this community interact with the abiotic factors. So get the whole idea or not now? We have the species form the populations, population interact together to form a community. So this community interact with the abiotic factors such as water, concentrations of the oxygens, take in the CO2, okay, temperature, so how they interact, then form a complete ecosystem, okay? So a particular animal does not always occupy the same positions in a food chain. This is very, very important. If you look at this, eagle. If I follow this way, from the banana tree to an insect to a shrew, the shrew go to the snake go to the eagle. Okay, then eagle occupy at the quaternary consumer, primary, secondary, can I see that? Tertiary, quaternary. But you do realize that you have followed this banana to the shrew to the eagle. Now eagle actually occupy as a secondary consumer. Correct? If I go to this way, it becomes tertiary. Can you see that? From the banana tree producer, primary, secondary, and tertiary. So those organisms, they won't occupy at the top trophic level for all the time, because every time energy transfer between one trophic level to another trophic level, you can see that energy loss take place. Okay, from banana tree to the shrew, for example, only about 10% or less than 10% of energy transfer to the shrew. And from the shrew to the snake, another 10% only. From the snake to the eagle, another 10% only. So means that if I started here with 1,000 unit energy, if you consider 10% that's max, so only 100 unit of energy for the shrew, and 10 unit for the snake, and only 1 for the eagle. So if eagle always occupy at quaternary level, so means that energy supply for them is insufficient for them to sustain. So that's why they have to feed at different trophic level. Are you clear? Right? They have to feed at different trophic level. So what we say is, okay, herbivore always as the primary, but carnivore can feed at different trophic level in the food webs. Okay, so efficiency of the transfer energy from producer to primary consumer rarely greater than 10%. Similar losses occur at each trophic level. So means that about 90% of energy will be lost in the food chains. So means that top trophic level carnivore have to feed at lower energy so that they get sufficient energy supplies. So why energy loss along the food chain? For example, in this case, we have the producer, primary consumer, and secondary consumer. Majority of the energy will be lost as the respirations. Okay, so about 10%. So we need to learn here, apart from the loss of energy during respiration, suggest explanation why the efficiency of transfer of energy from the producer to primary consumer and from primary consumer to secondary consumer is rarely greater than 10%. So we do know that even though we take the plant, okay, we take the plants. So not all parts of the plants being eaten. Correct or not? When you take the plant, you may take the leaf, stem, you don't take it. Correct or not? Okay. For example, if not all parts can be eaten, for example, the bone of the primary consumer may not be eaten. The hair, the fur, the feather. If you eat chicken, you don't eat feather, right? Can you see that? So not all the parts of the plant or parts of the organism being eaten. So I think this is better to put it. Not all the parts of the organism being eaten. Even though we eat it, it may not be fully digested. Or some molecules are not able to be absorbed. For example, you take the plant. Okay, when you take the plants, we may not be able to digest the cellulose because we don't have the cellulase. So those will be lost as the feces. Okay, but don't worry about this because we do have the decomposer later to help us to decompose it and return this molecule to the plants, and the plant can absorb it again. Okay, so energy loss also as a heat within the consumer digestive system as the food molecules are hydrolyzed because we break down the food particle, but we don't have the system or we don't have the mechanism to absorb this heat energy. Okay, so energy from every organism at the end will flow into the decomposer and also detritivores. Okay, so for example, decomposer includes the bacteria and fungi. Detritivores, okay, includes the large animals such as the earthworm. So that's why you can see that each organism, they have their own niche in the ecosystem. If you look at decomposer, like earthworm, bacteria, fungi, so their niche is to decompose those undigested material and return the energy back to the ecosystem. Okay? Can you see that? If we only have a small number, there's no diversity, a small number of species only. If we don't have the earthworm, we don't have the bacteria, we don't have the fungus in our ecosystem, what will happen? Those undigested parts, it won't be decomposed. Then this energy will be wasted. Can you see that? So all energy at the end, you can see that it will be received by decomposer, and this decomposer also do help us, okay, to return the nutrients back to the ecosystem through a process called as the Biogeochemical Cycle. Okay, Biogeochemical Cycle. So very important, we do need to recycle because we have the limited supply. If we continue to use it from the environment, then one day you may not have any more. For example, nitrogen, we keep on using the nitrogen from the atmosphere without returning the nitrogen back to the atmosphere. So one day we won't have the nitrogen anymore, right? Okay, so biogeochemical cycle is the flow of the elements or the nutrients circulate through the community and also the environment. So we have to interact between these two now. Okay, so in the biosphere involving nutritional relationship, autotroph, heterotroph together with the decomposer. So means that we need to have a diversity in the organism. If we don't have a diversity in organism, one person cannot do all. One species cannot do all of this. So we must have different organisms to carry out different role. Okay, so this role we term it as the ecological niche, or a simple word form, the niche of organism in the ecosystem. Okay, the word the niche. Okay, so the element are first absorbed by producer from the environment in the form of soluble salts or mineral ions. After biosynthesis, we form organic compound. Okay, later we're going to use a nitrogen cycle, right, to study this. Nitrogen cycle to study this. So the element is circulated from the producer to consumer and available again through the detritivores and also decomposer. So geochemical activities like rainfall, lightnings, volcano eruption made elements available to the to reservoir in the ecosystem. And metabolic fixation such as nitrogen fixation also brings some element into the reservoir. Okay, so out of so many geochemical cycle, our focus will be in the nitrogen cycle. Okay, will be in nitrogen cycle. My mistake here, guys, when I copy and paste, I didn't realize that, okay, I didn't change the title when I copy and paste. So this is, please correct it, it's a nitrogen cycle. Okay, I don't know whether I edit the notes there or not, okay. If not, then sorry, please help to edit it. So this is what we're going to learn, but we do not need to remember. Don't go and memorize it. Are you clear? Even though in the essay question, we may need a certain information, but not all. Don't waste your time to remember, but at least you know that why we need to maintain the biodiversity. Okay, based on what? Okay, now look at this part here, okay? As I said that you guys have learned this before, you guys have learned this nitrogen cycle before, okay? It's just a revision. So one of the things here is, if you look at the nitrogen gas in the air. So this nitrogen gas in the air, even though we have roughly about 78%, but unfortunately none of the eukarya, the member of eukarya, can use this nitrogen directly. So it means that nitrogen gas that we inhale into our lung and release it through the exhalation, none of the nitrogen gas will be used at all, because our body won't be able to utilize this nitrogen gas because it's relatively inactive, non-reactive at all. Are you clear? Non-reactive form. We cannot use it at all. So we have to depend on first types of bacteria. So can write down this is a bacteria. So this bacteria is called rhizobium. Very special kind of this bacteria, rhizobium, because rhizobium only can live in this what we call the leguminous plant, for example, peanut plant. Okay, so this leguminous plant will have a nodules for bacteria to live inside. So this bacteria is rhizobium. What rhizobium going to do? Rhizobium going to convert atmospheric nitrogen into the ammonium ion. So supply these ammonium ions to the leguminous plant. So can you see that biodiversity involved here? If we don't have the rhizobium, sorry, too bad, nitrogen gas cannot be used at all in this case. Okay, majority is through this rhizobium. So this rhizobium will have the ability to convert, okay, nitrogen into the ammonium ions. These ammonium ions will be used by the plants, not all plants, but the leguminous plants, and use this to form amino acids. So how this leguminous plant going to use this ammonium? They're going to use this ammonium as the one to form the amino acid. Are you clear? Add this ammonium into the skeletons to form the amino acids. The condensation process takes place between the amino acid form the polypeptide and proteins, and this protein will be consumed by the animal. Can you see that? So this organic nitrogen here is protein. So these proteins and also nucleic acid basically, okay, will be consumed by the animal. Are you clear? So in this case, can you see that? The flow of the energy. Flow of the energy. Can you see that? The flow of the energy takes place from the plant producer to the consumer. Okay? So now what actually happened here? If you look at this, as we know that, okay, after this organic nitrogens in the animal, the proteins, okay, they are organics. What will happen here? Excretion take place, form urea. Okay, form urea. Okay, and then when the plants die, animal die, decompose take place to form the organic nitrogen in the soils, breakdown. So breakdown to what? Breakdowns into the amino acid. Clear not? Breakdown of the proteins to form the amino acid, we have the urea, and we do have the decomposer. So this part can be a fungus, fungi, bacteria. What will happen to these fungi and bacteria? They carry out the decompositions and converts this urea and the amino acid into the ammonium ions in the soil. Can you see that? Ammonium ion in the soil. So this ammonium ion can be absorbed by the non-leguminous plant and also the leguminous plants, and use these ammonium ions to make amino acid. Again, can you see that cycling take place here already? A small cycle. So the process involved here is called decompositions and ammonification. Are you clear? The red color, decompositions and also ammonification to form the ammonium. But not all plants will be able to be uptaken by the plants. So this ammonium, will be converted into the nitrites ITE and nitrate ATE by what we call the nitrifying bacteria. This one, please do know, these two bacteria is called nitrifying bacteria. So what they do, they oxidize the ammonium into the nitrites. Then from the nitrite, oxidize again to form nitrate. And this nitrate is the one that can be uptaken by the plants and then form the amino acid and proteins. Can you see that? Another cycle here. Another cycle. Okay. But the question here is, if we continue to use a nitrogen without returning the nitrogen back to the atmosphere, one day no more nitrogen already. Are you clear? So how we can return the nitrogen back to the atmosphere through a nitrification process, denitrification process by denitrifying bacteria. Are you clear? Through this denitrifying bacteria. So this denitrifying bacteria help us to return the nitrogen back to the atmosphere. So that's why our atmosphere relatively stable with the nitrogen gas concentration. Okay, always about 78% of the nitrogen gas available. So again, we have 4 different main processes here that I actually include. First, we have the nitrogen fixation. Sorry, just now I didn't write it here. It's a nitrogen fixing bacteria. Okay, nitrogen fixing bacteria. So they carry out the nitrogen fixation. Can you see that the green color, nitrogen fixation? Why they need to do this? Why they can do this? Because they do have the enzyme to convert it, and they help us to convert the non-reactive nitrogen gas to a more reactive form, ammonium ions, so that the plant can use these ammonium ions to form polypeptide and protein, and this protein can be used or consumed by the consumer. So after this living organism die and through excretion, we do have the amino acid and urea. We're going to learn about this urea in the next topics, okay? And what will happen here is we do have the fungus and also the bacteria help us to decompose and convert them into the ammonium ions. So through a process called decompositions and ammonifications. Okay, so these ammonium ions can be absorbed by the plants, okay? But some of these ammonium ions will be oxidized from nitrites and nitrates by nitrifying bacteria. Okay, so this bacteria will help us to form back the nitrates, and this nitrate will be taken up by the plants again to form the proteins. Okay, so these nitrate ions will go through a process called denitrification, so that can return the nitrogen gas back to the atmosphere. Okay, so again, guys, from here, what you need to know, very simple. You do not need to remember all of them. Just understand that why we do need to maintain the biodiversity. If we don't maintain the biodiversity, we let those living organisms die, we let the bacteria to be extinct. So you try to imagine no more nitrosomonas, no more nitrobacter here. We won't be able to return the atmosphere, the nitrate as a nitrogen gas back to atmosphere. Because those actually give us they do have the ecological niche to maintain the ecosystem. If we don't have the rhizobium, we don't have the diversity, we don't have the rhizobium, we don't have the decomposer, the ecosystem cannot be sustained. Are you clear? Okay. So with this, you can try out. This a bit long. Okay, I go slowly. So it's a recorded one. So you can, after you have done, you can check your answer. As I said, I won't go through with this because it's not us. It won't be us, the process. You don't need to remember the entire process, but it's just a revisions here. Okay. So with this, I have done for the ecology. So stop recording.